Winter weather in springtime. Fierce winds knock out power to hundreds of thousands. More snow is on the way. A major refinery that exploded last year in California is cleared to reopen. Neighbors say pollution concerns are losing out to profits. And racers, start your drones. Rising stars of a sport that is just taking off. What is that sensation like for your body?
It feels so realistic that your heart rate starts going up.
This is the CBS Evening News.
Winter weather returned to the east this weekend with bitter temperatures, snow, and dangerous winds. Here's Jamie Yukas.
An Arctic blast is being felt along the East Coast. 2 people died in Massachusetts when a tree fell on their car. The visibility over Boston Harbor was also near zero for much of the morning. On social media, signs of spring looked more like winter, with tulips sprouting through new snow.
We've had some cold air funneling in from Canada.
WBZ meteorologist Pamela Gardner.
I have to ask you, it is April. We had a very mild winter. We're now into spring. Why is this happening now?
It seems like Mother Nature's playing a joke on us. We're going back to some winter-like temperatures briefly because of that jet stream digging a little bit farther to the south. But it looks like in the long-range forecast models, we'll see that polar jet lift to the north and maybe by midweek back to more spring-like temps.
Strong winds caused damage in New Jersey, where windows shattered and pieces of a fence went flying. Trees toppled and an empty beach house was blown over in New York. Winds there gusted up to 60 miles per hour. In February, a crane collapsed in these types of conditions, killing a person in Lower Manhattan.
We're putting new restrictions on crawler cranes.
New safety measures are being tested today with crane inspectors out in the field. From the Midwest to the Northeast, more than 300,000 people woke up without power. And according to FlightAware.com, passengers flying into Newark, New Jersey were delayed more than 2 hours due to wind. And earlier today, the National Data Buoy Center reported waves as high as 20 feet off the coast of New Jersey.
It is expected to be cold here in New York again tomorrow. By Wednesday, those temperatures do start to climb. But Jeff, with that means rain for much of the East Coast.
Jamie, thank you very much. On Tuesday, the race for the White House moves to Wisconsin, where a CBS News Battleground Tracker poll out today shows Ted Cruz 6 points ahead of frontrunner Donald Trump. Here's Major Garrett.
Hi, folks. How are you?
Despite trailing in Wisconsin, Donald Trump sat with his eggs in a Milwaukee diner and sounded sunny side up.
I think we're going to do really well in Wisconsin. I think we have a chance of winning it.
Trump usually wins where he leads and loses where he trails, and he's trying to recover from a very bad week. Florida police charged Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, with battering a female reporter, and Trump struggled numerous times to explain who would be punished if abortion were outlawed.
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
At this moment, the laws are set, and I think we have to leave it that way.
On Face the Nation, Trump said ups and downs are part of politics.
I don't know that it's been the worst week in my campaign. I think I've had many bad weeks, and I've had many good weeks. I don't see this as the worst week in my campaign.
God bless the great state of Wisconsin.
Ted Cruz, campaigning in Green Bay today with Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, sought to capitalize by consolidating the anti-Trump vote.
That nominating Donald Trump would be a train wreck. And that's not fair to train wrecks.
A Cruz win in Wisconsin could buoy his campaign with grassroots donations and establishment backing. Trump holds commanding leads over Cruz in states like New York, which votes April 19th, and Pennsylvania, which votes April 26th. Earlier this week, in a speech to college students about success, Trump said one key is understanding the power of momentum and the importance of keeping it. Trump's momentum has propelled him through most of this campaign, and Jeff, it is now on the line in Wisconsin.
Major Garrett, thanks. On the Democratic side, our new poll shows Bernie Sanders 2 points ahead of frontrunner Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin. So we're going to bring in our elections director, Anthony Salvanto. Now, Anthony, always good to see you. The frontrunners, both of them, have fallen behind in Wisconsin. Let's talk about the Democrats first. Overall for Hillary Clinton, how much of a concern is that?
Well, in Wisconsin, you have a very liberal Democratic electorate. That tees it up very well for someone like Bernie Sanders. So it's a close race there, but overall, the delegate math is still on Hillary Clinton's side because She's got the lead in the elected delegates, and she's got a lead in what we call superdelegates. Those are party leaders in the Democratic side who can support whomever they want. They're still behind her as well. So the climb for Bernie Sanders, even if he wins Wisconsin, is still pretty steep, Jeff.
All right, now back to the Republicans. Donald Trump had a rough week, yet he is still up in 2 of the 3 states you looked at, in New York and Pennsylvania. He's down in Wisconsin. Why?
Well, the rough week you mentioned, the controversy around some of his comments, that's pretty much baked into the cake for Donald Trump supporters at this point. They tell us in the polls that they think sometimes some of his comments go a little too far, but they're supporting him anyway. So the lead you see for Ted Cruz in Wisconsin, I think, is more reflective of a very conservative Republican electorate there and the kind of voter who's looking for a conservative candidate.
So for Ted Cruz, what does Wisconsin represent then?
It's probably the last chance for a while to put a dent into Donald Trump's lead. It is that kind of conservative state, but going forward, those states you mentioned, New York, Pennsylvania, the map now goes into territory that probably favors Donald Trump.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
A new study out today confirms what millions of people taking statins have been complaining about for years, and it may offer a solution. Jerika Duncan has more on this.
Peggy O'Connor, who suffered a heart attack after years of battling high cholesterol, had complained to her doctor about statins she was taking, drugs that can lower bad cholesterol.
When I started on the statin, I started having muscle spasms.
Claims like that were initially dismissed by some in the medical community. Dr. Stephen Nissen is the lead researcher of the Cleveland Clinic study.
We've confirmed that this is a problem that's real, and we have given them an alternative.
Dr. Nissen says problems including muscle pain and weakness affect up to 10% of people on statins, or 3 to 4 million Americans. The study looked at more than 500 patients who reported side effects and are considered statin intolerant. The patients in the study were given a statin or a sugar pill. About 42% who took a statin experienced muscle pain or weakness. The second part of the study involved testing non-statin cholesterol-lowering drugs. One was an oral drug, the other injectable. Both worked, however, the injectable had better results.
Patients that got one of the new injectable cholesterol-lowering drugs had a 52 to 54% reduction in the levels of their bad cholesterol.
What are the costs per year when talking about the injectable non-statin drugs?
It is about $14,000 a year, so they are quite expensive.
The cost for statins is a few $100s per year.
Dr. Nissen estimates about 36 million people in this country rely on statins. So far, 2 injectable non-statins have been approved by the FDA. Jeff?
Jerika Duncan, thank you. The airport in Brussels, Belgium, reopened today under extremely tight security. The first flight since the airport was hit by a deadly terror bombing 12 days ago took off for Portugal. Intercontinental flights are expected to resume tomorrow morning. An ISIS commander blamed for the death of a U.S. Marine was killed today by a drone strike in Iraq. The ISIS member was said to be behind the rocket attack that killed Staff Sergeant Lewis Carden and wounded 8 other Marines last month. Also engaged in the fight against ISIS with the help of U.S. forces are Kurdish soldiers, the Peshmerga. As Holly Williams reports, they're running out of money.
For nearly 2 years, Iraq's Kurdish fighters have led the battle against ISIS, known as the Peshmerga, which means one who faces death. These Kurdish soldiers have helped claw back towns, villages and territory from the extremists. Nearly 1,400 Peshmerga have lost their lives. In a war they're fighting without enough body armour or helmets to go round, with very few heavy weapons, and against an enemy that uses suicide bombs and booby traps.
The Kurds are not only fighting for themselves, but for the rest of the world.
Masroor Barzani is the head of the Security Council in Iraqi Kurdistan, a region that's been plunged into economic crisis by the falling price of oil, with consequences for the Peshmerga.
They haven't been paid for months at least.
They haven't been paid for 4 months.
No.
And they're fighting ISIS on the front line.
They are. They believe in the cause, but unfortunately they have families. They have people to take care of. And we don't know for how much longer they can stand in the front lines without being paid.
The Kurds say the war against ISIS has cost them billions of dollars, not only in bullets and fighters' pay, but because they've opened their doors to outsiders.
You've taken in 1.8 million people
Yes.
who have fled ISIS.
Yes.
That's a big burden for such a
Yes,
small place.
It is, absolutely. It has increased the population of Kurdistan by almost 30%.
And near the front line, just north of Mosul, a city occupied by ISIS, is another potential disaster. Mosul Dam, which was built by Saddam Hussein's regime on weak foundations, has fallen into disrepair, and dangerously so. Engineers warn that it could break at any time.
What would happen if the dam broke?
A large part of Mosul will be flooded in a matter of few hours, and then anything on the way, all the way to Baghdad. It would take few days to reach Baghdad, but it would be flooded, everything on the way.
The US says it could trigger a 45-foot-high flood wave on the River Tigris, endangering the lives of 1.5 million people in a part of the world already suffering the effects of another man-made catastrophe. Holly Williams, CBS News, Erbil, Iraq.
The reopening of a major oil refinery and the neighbors against it. An escalator sends Flyers fans flying. And we're off to the drone races when the CBS Evening News continues. An ExxonMobil refinery in Southern California has the go-ahead to reopen after an explosion last year. But neighbors say the process of getting it back online involves a new danger: increased air pollution. Danielle Nottingham has details.
This was the scene after a sudden explosion shut down this ExxonMobil refinery in Torrance last year. Smoke and ash covered surrounding neighborhoods. Stephanie Rudat-Stevens says she'll never forget hearing the large boom.
I was petrified.
The blast damaged a gasoline refining unit. The plant provides 20% of Southern California's gas. The crippled plant cut production, sending gas prices in parts of California above $4 per gallon. Homeowners within miles of the facility packed a 12-hour public hearing, worried about what reopening the refinery will do to their air.
I'm very concerned about the pollution that should occur.
One engineer compared restarting the plant to starting up an old car. During the first hours, hundreds of pounds of hazardous pollutants will be pumped into the air, numbers exceeding state limits. Late last night, the Air Quality District Board voted to allow the company to fully restore refinery operations. As part of the agreement, ExxonMobil will have to pay a $5 million fine for those increased emissions and the explosion. In an emailed statement, ExxonMobil tells CBS News it agrees with the decision and is working to safely restart the Torrance refinery. ExxonMobil sold the refinery last year to a New Jersey-based energy company for $500 million. The deal is contingent upon ExxonMobil proving the plant is in good working condition. Maureen Mock is a City of Torrance commissioner.
This is the equivalent of slapping some paint on your home to get it resold and walk away to a safer place.
The district board order states that ExxonMobil cannot restart the plant during school or business hours and must give the community 48 hours notice before it begins operations. Danielle Nottingham, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Up next here, a little dog stops traffic on a big bridge. A big thrill turned into a big scare for hockey fans in Philadelphia last night. An escalator suddenly sped up at the Wells Fargo Center, home of the Flyers, after they won. Fans were sent tumbling. Nobody was seriously hurt. The team has not said what caused the malfunction. Small disruption on the San Francisco Bay Bridge today. Very small. That is a Chihuahua being pursued by a motorcycle officer. They eventually picked the dog up. He is now in the care of an animal shelter. Traffic was shut down there just a little bit. Police say if this is your Chihuahua, please come forward. Still ahead here, the new sport described as a video game on steroids. Think drones, and the first words that come to mind might be spying or secrecy, not sport. That could be changing. Across the country, a new kind of competition has taken off, and 60 Minutes Sports got an up-close look. This is what drone pilots see as they speed around a course, and it's what makes drone racing so addictive. The pilots wear FPV goggles. FPV for first-person view. The goggles are receiving streaming video from a camera on the drone. FPV gives racers the sensation that they're flying, that they are the drone. When you first put on those FPV goggles, what's going through your mind?
First thing I had to do was sit down. Because it can be a bit disorientating because your body is giving you one sensation and your eyes are giving you something else.
Chad Nowak was an oil worker from Australia when he won the first U.S. drone racing championship last summer.
After a couple of flights, all of a sudden the world starts opening up, and I can fly through that doorway now and down that hallway and along that path.
What is that sensation like for your body?
Oh, it feels so realistic that your heart rate starts going up. When you're trying a new trick or you're trying to shoot a gap that you know if it doesn't work that you're going to break something, that your heart starts pounding and you get a little bit nervous.
Most pilots begin by fooling around with drones in their backyard. For Bapu Madhu, an employment counselor from California, it quickly became an obsession.
You know, when I started the hobby, it was just something to do, just to kill time. But it's so addictive. I've always been a gamer all my life. And this right here, drone racing, is like video game on steroids, I think.
You can see the full story and the rest of 60 Minutes Sports Tuesday night on Showtime. That is the CBS Evening News tonight, later on CBS 60 Minutes. And first thing tomorrow, CBS This Morning. I'm Jeff Glor in New York. Good night.
He's a self-taught two-time Masters champion, but that's not the most interesting thing about Bubba Watson.
Scared of heights, scared of buildings falling on me.
And that's not all. 60 Minutes tonight.
CBSN, CBS News, always on.